Let's talk about whether it's time to say farewell to one of the Shmeemobiles. I want to focus on something that's been part of the collection for a while, but you haven't seen it very often in videos. Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello, and welcome back to the channel, where first up, we need a bit of a shuffle because the SF90 Stradale does not normally live right here, and I need to pop that away somewhere, figure some things out, because there are about to be some changes. We're gonna have a swap around in our long-term fleet car, the Mach-E GT. At some point we'll be heading off, something's coming in, but then soon thereafter, there's going to be another new car, something that up to this point, I've not told you anything about at all. Plus, I want to grab the keys to one of the cars, which, like I say, you haven't seen on the channel very often recently, take it out for a drive, and talk about what the future looks like. We have a few more weeks with the Mach-E GT, the flagship version of the electric Mustang. I know that's a controversial topic, but we've enjoyed the car a lot over the last few months. Our team car, something that we often have on rotation. We've had some very cool cars in the past, but at the moment, since installing the Dura workshop corner, I'm yet to have the C-Tech charger reinstalled on the wall, which means we're charging this from the regular main socket. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit tedious. That is something we're gonna look at very soon, but like I say, this is shortly to be departing, and then something else is going to be replacing it, but that's not the car that I want to touch on a little bit today. As you can see at the moment, there's a bit of a space over on this side. That's just the way that things have been parked up for the time being. There are a couple of cars that are missing. The Zenvo is at the factory in Denmark. It'll be back here after the winter. We also have the other Mustang. Technically there are two here if you include the Mach-E and of course the Shelby GT500, but the Dark Horse is over in California in the United States with Team Carnage. But even with those two back, at the moment 4 of the lifts are obviously sitting down. We've got that big space, loads of room, but always thinking about what's coming. I've announced the likes of the Roma Spider, the SF90 XX. I've just given you a pretty big teaser that something big is coming in the not too distant future. And of course, there'll be some surprises. So I'm always thinking about a little bit of rotation, what's going to need to go, what's going to come, changing things up. I think that's a big part of collecting cars and enjoying the driving experiences, which probably leads me on to where we're headed. But before that, I need to figure out what's going on over here. This then, the SF90 is currently parked here because in here is where we've got an electricity socket. Now, when it comes to charging the hybrid cars, and remember every single car is living on a C-Tech smart charger, but the hybrids, these two, the 296 and the SF90, need to be on something a little bit beefier, which you can't run through a multi-way extension lead. Now, the plan long-term is that over on the Mouseum side, I'll have some charging ports installed, but for the moment, unless I want to park them underneath the lift, it's a no-go. One thing I will add is that both of these two cars are too low with their carbon fiber diffusers to put them on the top of the Benpack auto stackers. Out of every car I have, it's only these two that are too low, and they only have front lifts, not 4-wheel lifts, so you can't do anything about it. So that means I've basically had them over in this corner, and to unplug it, you literally switch that off. This can then be pulled out, and you can close up the electric charging flap. It is a little bit of a fiddle, I'm not going to lie, in comparison to the C-Techs, which you just simply unplug from the back, but my plan is to pull this forward so that it's out the way for the moment, pull out the F1 show car, and basically take that somewhere else, and put this back away in there, just to see what it looks like, because that's part of testing with the garage. This is all new, right? So I don't actually know. And what I can also do, and hopefully I remember to beat this out, Halo Bay on. Ta-da, that is really bright, but yeah, this will look pretty nice in there. So give me a second, we'll get this swapped around, pull this forwards. Then back over here, one of the things we did with this, with all of the restoration to it at TDF, was to get the steering column linked up, which means technically I can give it a push, although we do have a bit of a flat tire, which makes it a little bit harder, as you can hear. Kind of grabbing, but hey, this is the world's fastest F1 car, I promise. We'll just take it over here for a moment. Just like that. One of the things with this is you can loop that right on there, which, to be honest, I should probably do more often than I currently do. But then I can plug this in at the back. You then plug it into the car. There's a bit of a process to this. Plug it into the car. I don't think there's anywhere to leave that one though. That one just kind of dangles. then turn it on, and that's in place. And as we step back, the color of this under the lights, and yes, I know that this is really, really bright, but it looks amazing. The only test I need to see is what happens with our projector that goes onto the glass, but we shall get to that one. For now, that's looking pretty cool. Another topic of discussion, given I've driven it so rarely recently, the Shelby GT500. Of course, I now own two traditional form factor Mustangs. Over here in Europe, we have the GT500. In the United States, we have the new Dark Horse. I actually have a bit of feeling like I'm missing the Dark Horse right now. We did so many miles with it in the first month of ownership, but since then, it's been parked in California. Now, the two cars actually sound very similar, and that, by the way, is epic. If I just lock this and double press that, it's mad how cool this thing sounds. It's absolutely mad. Now, I'm not sure how good it is for it to turn it off as soon as you turn it on. At some point, I need to get this back out and drive it properly. The other topic of conversation, which I've spoken about at length before, but I probably need to be taking a little bit more seriously, is if you come in over here to talk about the wheels. I have the carbon fiber wheels on this. This was part of the carbon fiber track pack. The full carbon wheels, spokes and barrels. We've changed two of them in the past, and I'm paranoid driving them. The nature of the car is one where you just hop in it and you drive it. So I have carbon wheels as well on the Zenvo, but the Zenvo wheels I feel are a little bit different because of the approach to the car in the first place. Whereas on this, I should probably be changing these out for something that's a bit more everyday usable to get more out of the car. Now, I would love at some point that the Dark Horse and the GT500 are together. I would also love at some point to add a GTD to the collection, and that's a topic for another day. But for the time being, I don't see this going anywhere because it's such a cool car with an amazing story. It's a big part of the whole Ford collection, you know, having the GT, the two Mustangs, the Mach-E, the Transit, the Focus RS. There will be more in the future as well. And the colors and just everything about it, the memories of the car, it's a big part of the story. You know, even 67, because of the first GT500 being back in 1967. But I do wonder, because I haven't really driven it much since it arrived in the UK. We took it over to Germany to the Nürburgring, but outside of that, in the now year and a month or two since it's been on these shores, it's not really had that much of an outing. I still need to work out also where this is going to go. Now, my original idea with this, before we started putting it in the Halo Bay, because the idea with the Halo Bay was that was where the newest addition to the collection would live, in the Pride of Place space. But the idea with this was to actually have it over here, where the Dub Customs TVR has been living. I think that will be heading off before too long. Dan was here recently and we were talking about it. But over at this side, which is more where you've got the arcade machines, you've got all of the games, all of the different toys and things here at the collection, it would fit very nicely next to the seating area. So that's going to be the idea, that it sits a row back from where the museum cars are out at the front. I'll turn it around and deal with that afterwards. But for now, we should actually get to the car that I want to talk about today. You might have already guessed, given where it's parked, but today, on a horrible day outside, believe me, it is all about the Ford Focus RS Heritage Edition. The Heritage RS, one of only 50 cars in total in the world that they made of these, something that I think not all that many people actually know about, and we kind of daily drive it, which, if you appreciate how special this is, it's a little bit ironic in some ways. There are literally only 50 of them to celebrate 50 years since the 1968 Escort Mach-1, which was in many ways the ancestor of this, and the reason that I have the 68 on the plate as well, which was a bit complicated back at the time to kind of hold it for a few months to make sure I could register it on that plate, which came in on the 1st of September 2018. In the UK, we have a very complicated process, but basically all 50 of these are here in the UK to celebrate the success of the Focus RSs in the United Kingdom. We love our hot hatches. We have loved Ford Focuses, and the Mark III was immensely popular over here. I had an original nitrous blue car. I then had the red RS, which I'd hope to catch up with again in the not too distant future. And then this was really the icing on the cake. They're all in this Tief Orange, which is the heritage paint color back to the original Escort Mark I. There are a few other changes. We added a few bespoke things to this. So wrapped the roof in matte black. Normally that is actually orange, but I like that contrast. I want to show you in the front, so let me just open this very quickly so we can head round. I did actually swap out the calipers as well. The original calipers for this are technically unpainted, but I got a second set of calipers and had them painted as well. Well, actually I got them from someone else who had painted them rather than just keeping the original ones on, because I like the car to be a little bit recognizable. As many of you will know, I don't like factory launch specifications, so something to change it up a little bit. And then in the front, if I could figure where the catch for this is, it's off to the side, always forget that. In here, the Heritage actually has, as you can see, the orange intake from Mountune. It has 25 horsepower more than the standard Focus RS, so 375. Makes quite an unusual whistling sound when you start it up, but completely unique to have that. On any of the other cars, that would be in blue or one of the other colours that Mountune offer. Only on this, so fully warranted with the upgrades, and that is literally how it was supplied. So this car I have owned for 5 years and 3 or 4 months, which is crazy how quickly that time has flown by. In that time, it's done an admittedly very low 9,250 miles, so a little less than 2,000 miles a year, because we only drive it for short distances. Although saying that, it has been across to the continent. I had a lot of fun with this back in the day out in the snow. And when I say a lot of fun, I truly mean it. The very clever four-wheel drive system. Gosh, it's windy outside. We're going to go for a drive in a minute and you'll see why this is the right car. But a very, very clever four-wheel drive system, which was a whole lot of fun out in some very deep powder. I've also taken it across to Germany to the Autobahn and driven it on the Nürburgring Nordschleife, as many of the Shmeemobiles have. I think probably the only Heritage RS to have done that. But given there's no Mark IV generation of this car, this is the end of the lineage of the Focus RS. It's even more special as a result. And the fact there are only 50 of them, it's appreciated in value a lot from new. Obviously, the delivery mileage unregistered cars probably even more so than the ones that have been out there and had some fun. But I always believe in driving cars. That's what they're built for. That's what you should do with them. And driving them, and talking about that weather, let's go get on the road and I'll explain exactly what makes this thing truly special. Before we go out, I have a story to share with you from the sponsor of today's video, carVertical. Now, as you know, cars like this, people like to go out and hoon them, as I'm about to. People also apparently like to smash them up, as I'm hopefully not about to. But carVertical allow you to run a check on a car that you're looking to buy to save you time and money, to know a bit more about its history, whether it's had any mileage rollbacks, if there's some outstanding finance, or if it's been involved in an accident. Now, working in many different countries connected to government registries and insurance databases means access to all sorts of information. And take, for example, this particular blue Focus RS that's been declared a scrap thanks to a pretty horrific accident, and I hope the occupants would have been okay in that, damaged throughout the exterior, only for salvageable parts, not to be returned to the road. Whereas on the other hand, this black Focus RS that had a pretty nasty shunt has gone on to be repaired. It has a category against it from insurance, but it's been fixed up, it's back on the road. In fact, it recently had a registration plate change as well. If that was a car you either owned or were looking to buy, you'd want to run that history. You'd want to know that that's what had happened to it in the past. Let's say it had been repaired, but that repair history hadn't been explained or disclosed to you. You'd want to know about it to save yourself the time and potentially the money on purchasing the vehicle. So make sure to run a check, whether it's a car you're looking to buy, as I always do when picking up a new Shmeemobile, or whether it's something perhaps you already own to learn a little bit more about the car that you're driving around with. And using the code Shmee150, you can also save 10% on your check as well. So more information down below about that from carVertical. For now, it's time to get this out. As I am British and we are currently driving here in Britain, this weather is very representative of this time of year. It is a bit wet, it is very dark and gloomy, it is a little bit miserable, but we love our country lanes and we love cars like this, and we love being able to open up the taps and stretch the legs of something like this. And there are so many reasons why I enjoy the Focus RS. And I think it's a very interesting time in the market in general. If you think back, I bought my blue RS back in summer 2016, so 7.5 years ago. That car did, off the top of my head, something like 17,000 miles. I then had the red RS, which did the best part of 10,000 miles, and this again has done almost 10,000 miles or so in total driving as well. So between them, while I know it's not absolutely loads, what you have to remember, for my basically commuting car, it's actually quite a lot. In fact, from my current setup, if I were to commute every single day that I'm in the United Kingdom of the entire year, I would do around 1,200 miles in total, going to and from every day, so it's not exactly a whole lot of driving. Basically, this is the car that we use, myself and my girlfriend, for going to the supermarket, going to the shops, for driving backwards and forwards. She does a lot of miles driving in it as well. She always loved the blue RS, obviously didn't really drive the red RS so much, and it was a funny story because the red and the Heritage basically arrived at the same time. It was by choice to delay the collection of this, the red being limited to 300 units, and actually keep in good touch with the owner of that car through to today. But when you come to these types of roads, right, countryside lanes where it's wet, it's greasy, it's bumpy, they're very narrow and small, technical, twisty roads, cars like this just absolutely destroy any supercar. I mean, I've driven this road in countless different cars on the channel to date, in hypercars, in pretty much every car from my own collection, and when you come down here in something like this, or the Clio V6, or the 1M, that's where you are right at home because of the type of roads we have. You want something that's just easy to maneuver, easy to handle, easy to make the most of, easy to have fun with. And when you drop this down through the gears, it's got the standard exhaust. I never upgraded it as I did with either of the previous two. But the way that it pulls up, 25 horsepower more than the standard car isn't necessarily a lot, but that was still with full warranty as well. So this doesn't appear at the forefront of the channel because I don't use it like that. It's not the car that I'm going to do tons of road trips and things with. It's a car that sits, I know, very much in the background. In fact, it's often not at the Shmuseum at all, and there are messages saying where is it in case I've sold it or something like that, because it pretty much lives at home if you think about it, and if you think about what it does and what it's for, that makes the most sense anyway. The road opens up. I mean, this thing's just pure entertainment. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking, why don't I just daily drive the Purosangue? Isn't that like the perfect daily? But the thing is, it's such a big, expensive, powerful car, you just can't drive it in the same way as something like this. And don't get me wrong, I love experiencing things like the Purosangue, like the 296, but it's not the same for throwing down a countryside lane. You know, this amount of power, you can get up through the revs, you can have fun with it, you can enjoy what the car was actually built for going out and driving. And although this is the Heritage, which makes it double the price of a new one, what it costs new, it's probably worth £70,000, if not even more than that. It's still a Focus RS, so servicing is like £200 a year. Parts, pads and things, if you need them, are not exactly overly expensive. So it's a very easy car to live with and to use and to drive. The only problem today is that the roads are incredibly busy. It is that Christmas time where in the 60-mile-an-hour limits, people drive at 30, 40, and then you go into the 30 and they speed up and drive at 40, if not even faster. Just some people I will never understand, but anyway, it's a car that we used for the Christmas run to go stay with my family, obviously take a whole load of presents in the back. It's practical, it's usable. Don't often drive this with a full load of people. I have to be honest, it's not done many outings with more than 2 people in it. It's not for me about being practical in that sense, but it's about this balance of using it without worrying about it, whether it's for the supermarket run, whether it's for daily errands, but also having fun. And on the topic of fun, that's where we talk about the 6-speed manual. These were only available as manual cars. Obviously in the modern world, there aren't a whole lot of manual cars that you can still buy. One of the reasons I bought my Mustang Dark Horse with the 6-speed Tremac as opposed to with the 10-speed auto was long live the manual. My dad recently bought his new M2, also with a manual. In the collection I've got the Emira with a manual, the GT8, the Clio V6, the 1M. I like my manual cars wherever possible. If it's an option, long live it, because these aren't around forever. Obviously autos are faster, are smoother, are more environmentally friendly. Often with dual clutches can be fabulous in terms of engagement and fun to drive as well, but never quite the same as a manual hatch. Now, this being 4-wheel drive, it's a kind of funny system that effectively can change the torque distribution depending what's going on. You can basically do a bit of a on-the-spot swizzle with it if you are that way inclined, or have a little bit of fun. It's an unusual feeling. It doesn't do the turn in the way that you would naturally expect it to, which again takes a little bit of adapting and getting used to. When you get to the top of the rev range, it's just awesome. This thing is an absolute riot, and there are so few modern cars that offer you the same level of entertainment, the same level of fun, while still being immensely practical and usable. And I've had things like the G80 M3, great car, ticks loads of boxes, but it won't make you smile in the same way that driving this does. It doesn't have that same, oh my gosh, this thing is just a little bit leery, for example, even when we made it incredibly loud as we did. And like I say, there's a difference on a narrow road like this, oncoming cars, in driving a car of this size than something of the Purosangue's size, which is why I really thought the GR Yaris would be that next step for me, and it would make this feel quite redundant, but I never really gelled with that car. We did some cool upgrades to it, the look, the exhaust, we changed a few things, but it never became what this or the predecessor, the Red RS, was for me. You know, this real fun machine. And you know, this kind of road, if I wasn't stuck behind another little Ford hatch as it happens, would be really, really quite epic. This is the perfect place for this kind of thing. But like I say, today, you know, I'll come down here sometimes and I won't see a single other car. Today it's just absolutely packed as we quickly get towards the end of the day and night falling. But you get a small sense of the fun that this is all about, and fun is really the key word when it comes to the Focus RS. The left-hand indicator and the brake lights, that is exactly what I want to see, which means open road ahead. Somebody else has actually caught up with me behind as well, in a Golf with some yellow lights on it as it happens. I would bet here keeps up a little bit with me here as well. I mean, this is just, look at it. Van coming the other way, dart down the road, glides pretty well, obviously very go-kart-esque suspension, not as firm as a Mini or something like that. And to be fair, I've not driven everything else on the market that would be classed as this segment. I've not driven every single car, enough of them, and nothing's ever made me go the same. I need to drive an old Golf GTI Club Sport S. That's probably the ultimate from what everybody's basically told me. But again, rear seat deletes, right, and 3 doors, not 5. It's a different kind of thing in terms of the usability. This has done so much over the years, been to so many places, been used for traveling with lots of luggage across Europe. It's been across Europe on multiple occasions, and yes, as expected, the Golf did stick right behind. I've thought about doing the exhaust change, installing the Mountune exhaust. Obviously, it's now out of warranty. Well, it would have had a 3-year warranty from new, I imagine. I've kept it serviced at the Ford main dealers up to this point because it's not doing a huge amount of mileage. Keep the stamps in the book. I didn't have any initial plans to sell it in the near future, but you never know, things change. And that's what I say, like if something came along that made me go, yes, that's the one. You know, if Ford had made a Mach 4 of the Focus RS, that would have been an interesting thing to consider, right? But the Mach 3 basically became the end, and it's got me thinking as well about whether I should go the other way and do a Mach 1 and Mach 2, you know, full lineup in the garage together and have the whole set almost of the Focus RSs. I'm heading back this way because we need to enjoy the countryside lane a little bit more as the sun actually starts to poke through a little bit through the clouds. But this for me is right. A lot of people complained about these with the height of the seats and felt that the seats were too high, and I lowered the seats in the red, and I never really liked the adjusted seat position. I've never had a problem with the height. I mean, I'm average UK height. I'm about 5 foot 10, 11, which is literally the average male height of a male in the United Kingdom. And for me, it's always worked. It's always been right. I don't feel uncomfortable at all. The shifter is in exactly the right place for me. I can get very comfortable with the steering wheel. And seats and positioning, you know, this has the Recaro sports seats. It's such a unique feeling. What works for one person isn't necessarily going to be right for the next. This is in sport mode, in case you haven't figured. I'm not in sport on the suspension, because that gets it a little bit too firm for these types of roads. That works when you're on something in Germany, doesn't work so well here. Of course, this car was actually built at the plant in Cologne, which is no more, as it were. All of them were, and it will have been built somewhere near the end. The Focus RS Club basically came up with working out which order these were built. I think this was about a third of the way through. It wasn't one of the latest. And at the time, there were effectively 70-something UK dealers, and the top sales of Mark III RSs by dealer, each of the top 50 got one of these. So no dealer got more than one. Obviously, if a dealer group had multiple dealers that had each been in the top 50 of the UK dealers, then they would get more than one, but officially it was one assigned to each of those dealers based on their performance. And I was super lucky that my dealer, effectively, from whom I had bought the blue and the red and introduced some friends who had also bought cars, had agreed in advance that when I heard this was coming and I, you know, said to them I'm really, really keen to add it to my collection, that if they get one, I would be able to have it. So they stayed true to their word, which was really awesome of them, because I know some dealers basically kept the car, maybe the boss bought the car and then kept a hold of it, left it unregistered, and a little bit later down the line popped it up for sale. And that's a little bit sneaky, but when you're not familiar with that world, I can see why it happens, even though I'm not the biggest fan of it. You know, I'm a big fan of these getting out there and being driven and being used, because at the end of the day, that's what it's for. And while if you look on the website that tracks what's registered in the United Kingdom, about 2/3 of these I think are no longer actually taxed and on the road. Most of them have been parked up and left parked up. It's cool that at least some of them are out there. You know, there have been a few meetings with a bunch of the Mark III heritages getting together, and it would be a cool thing to have with an RS500 from the Mark IIs. I mean, I'm just talking and you're listening in the background to basically me having a whale of a time driving down these roads. This is literally the kind of road I'm commuting on at the moment. And it's only a couple of miles, so I can't hammer it so hard because it's not normally up to temperatures in time. But when I can, it's a lot of fun. I can't really think what other people have said. You know, a few people have complained that the interior is a bit plasticky and nasty, and okay, yes, fair, because at the end of the day, it's based on what would now be 12, 13-year-old platform of the regular Ford Focus. So it's not exactly the, let's say, fanciest, swishest base car in the world on which to base a special limited edition. But that's why I like it, because it is just a Focus. To a lot of people, this is just a Ford Focus. This isn't something really special. There have been 1 or 2 times when I've been at petrol stations and someone's come up and been like, no way, that is a Heritage. Because anybody who does know what it is obviously has a lot of appreciation for this, for the Focus RS story. I mean, Ford have a massive global fan base, and I've discovered and learned a lot about this through the various Fords that I've owned over the years, and had a lot of fun going to so many events, meeting so many people, meeting people from the company, both here in the United Kingdom, in Europe, and also in the United States, of course, with the various trips I've done over there. And you get that passion and you can see what goes into it all. And it's almost a bit of a funny garage that I have going on with a bunch of Ferraris and a bunch of Fords, considering the history between those two companies. But they make such different cars. The Fords like this and the Mustang are kind of the ultimate of the hot hatch and the muscle car, like for the people, whereas the Ferraris are the ultimate of cars in general, you know, the ultimate supercars. This is so good. When you chuck it in, it's so responsive, it's so well connected, it feels so good, and just a delight, an absolute hoot to drive when you throw it through these lanes. Like, you don't even have to be going particularly quickly. I have not at one point gone over the speed limit in this video, because you don't need to in a car like this. You can run up the speed, you can have lots of fun with it, you can drop it down to 30 in second gear and just enjoy the little pops that come out of the exhaust, which change from one time to the next. There's a little bit of a difference to them, unlike say an R8 or something where it's literally the same every time, or the STO. The STO did exactly that, where it pops and bangs in the exact same order. I've waffled on for a lot because I have a lot of fun when I'm driving this car. The question then is, would I sell this car? And the long story short is no, not anytime recently, especially not with the Ford garage collection that I'm growing at the moment. To be lucky to have one of only 50 of these is unreal. You know, back at the time, I know a lot of people thought that I was just going to flip this, and for sure, if I had kept it at 0 mileage, maybe never literally ever even registered it, it would be worth more money. The same goes for so many cars. But where's the fun in that? These things are to drive. Even if they're super rare and special like this, it is to get out there and to go and have some fun and to drive the thing, to enjoy it, to build up those memories, to take it to places. It's fun when you get the turbos boosting in, or the turbo I should say, boosting in later in the RPMs, and it just gives you that extra power. Because it's this kind of thing that makes you feel a connection with your car, right? To have gone out and done something with it, to know that I've hooned this around in the snow 4 years ago or so, to know that I've driven it around the green hell. Those are the things that make it feel like a personal thing for me. I've wondered if perhaps there's a better daily to use to, in some ways, retire this, but there isn't. For what I do, this is so perfectly suited. For somebody who really likes Fords, to be lucky to have one of these, like, I can't, there's nothing I could do that would be better than this for what I need out of it. So no, this isn't going to go anywhere anytime soon. Just like I say, we drive it off camera. We drive it just as a car. My regular commute is in the Emira, or the normal times I'm going somewhere, I take the Emira. And again, it's not really on video all the time. And my girlfriend, if off camera or if we're together, it's generally in this. That's just what we choose to use. So I suppose I should head back to base. Time to get back to the Shmuseum before night falls. Having now returned, I've just been looking a little bit more at how many left to get some of the numbers behind these. Obviously there were originally 50 cars, plus they did kind of have one original prototype. I want to call it a prototype. It wasn't painted, it was wrapped, so that doesn't count. But of the 50, the highest number that were ever registered was 42. So I presume the other 8, 1 or 2 of them maybe got exported. Some of them probably never got registered. There's a thing about collecting cars to never even register them, although that means you can never register them in the future because the car becomes too old to meet the engine regulations and that kind of thing. So I find that a little bit criminal. Then the number has gone down from 42 here to now only 36 here in total. So 14 of them have left the United Kingdom, including the cars that have never been registered, which is amazing. But get this, the number of heritage RSs that are currently taxed and registered and legal to be driven in the United Kingdom is only 9 cars. Only 18% of them remain as cars that are registered. If they are basically put on SORN, as it's called, which is the off-road notification. That means they don't have to pay the road tax, but can't legally be driven on the road. And there are 27 of those, so plus the 9, 36 that remain, but only 9 cars. It's a car, it's supposed to be driven, and being a Focus RS means that it had all of the research and development, it had all of the testing. It's pretty strong. Obviously, in the early days of the cars, there were the head gasket issues because they had taken the head gasket, I think, from the Mustangs, which ended up having issues in this. It's not literally the same engine from one to the other, but the parts had problems. But that was literally only back in 2016. It never affected any of the cars that I've owned of the Focus RSs from the very start of production only. And by the time this has arrived, none of those issues obviously remain. I think it's criminal that so many people leave them parked up, to be totally honest. It's a car at the end of the day, and it's a very cool car that I've had a lot of fun with. So out of those 9, how many of them have driven the Nürburgring, been around a snowy car park, and been out for casual B-road bashing? Not a whole lot. Very, very, very few. But hey, I'm not complaining. It's a lot of fun. Still on the original tyres and wheels. These should be good for another year or 2. I do have a winter set, but back when I've had this car in the snow, I also had a second set of wheels because I had the original wheels from the red one because we put it on some BBSs. So I put the winter tyres on the red one. Long story. Anyway, if I wanted to take this back to proper snowy weather, I mean today is like 10 or 11 degrees Celsius, so too warm for winter tyres, I would, on these wheels, swap on the winter tyres probably, given that these are going to need to be changed at some point. There's a thing kind of about keeping them original, but it becomes, I would say, largely pointless at the end of the day. Anyway, I had a lot of fun driving that. And I hope you can understand why, even though you don't really see it that much on video, it's used an awful lot. It's not about to be sold. It's a pretty permanent part of the collection, really, at the end of the day, especially with the likes of the GT and the other Fords that are all here together. Even more so when you remember that one of the reasons for going with the red and gold, the Alan Mann Racing colour scheme, including the Alan Mann Racing gold stripes, is that back in 1968, in the British Touring Car Championship, they were victorious with the Escort Mach-1, the ancestor of this, of the heritage. And I love a good story. On that, I'm going to wrap up for today. A big thanks again to carVertical. Check out the information down below. Make sure to run a check of any car that you are looking to purchase. But that's it for this time, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers!